Hi guys, it's Guy and welcome back to my channel. I'm back again today with another sewing tutorial, and this is going to be on this fun little Fringe bodysuit. This was one of those projects that started off completely different. Like, I went into the store looking for like Fringe, so I took home like this Fringe trim, but like it was way too thin and I wanted something more thick and more full, so I just used the same fabric that this is made out of to make the Fringe. It's a great costume for dancing, and that's pretty much it. Look, the great thing, if you're not a good dancer like me, you just have to throw on something fringy, do a couple of these, and then people go crazy. It's made out of like this like spandex, lycra stretch material. I recommend you get like 2 to even 3 yards maybe, because like even though the bodysuit itself doesn't take that much fabric, it's really the fringe that takes more material than you would think. So I would say like 2 to 3 yards minimum if you want it to be really full. Anyway, I'll obviously put that stuff in the description for you, so let me just show you how it's done. Okay, so this is my fabric. It's a 4-way stretch, which is the most important part, and I started by going to an edge and folding it until it was wide enough to fit the width of my little bodysuit template. As you can see, my first try wasn't exactly enough, so I let out the fold until I got something wide enough. So we're gonna create our front and back with this 2-layer fold. And then I'm gonna fold this in half one more time so that I can cut out something symmetrical, and then I'm gonna cut around the folded pattern now on the fold. I've done this lots of times before on my channel, enough to know what works on me so that I'm able to create this pattern through trial and error, and I can just trace around it to create clones and clones of bodysuits. If you want, you can go watch my very first bodysuit video. It was not very good, but it'll give you an idea of where to start if you are starting from scratch. So I've cut my 2 pieces. I like to just cut my front one a little bit lower to show some chest, so I alter that afterwards, but we're not going to sew these 2 together just yet. Put them aside and we're going to cut out the sleeves next. Again, I've got a little pattern for my sleeves that I just created by tracing some sleeves from stuff I already owned. And like before, I folded once to make 2 identical sleeves, and I folded again to make it symmetrical. Now we should have all the bare bones pieces to make a simple long sleeve bodysuit, but I know that you came here to see the fringe, so that's what we're gonna do next. I was inspired by watching videos of Chi Chi Devane actually, and how her fringe sleeves would just fly around while she was dancing. Now I tried a few different methods. I would use like my fabric scraps, cutting out just long rectangles or like long squiggly lines. But what I thought looked the coolest was this circle method. Basically, you just cut out a circle from fabric like around the size of like a CD disc, and then with your scissors, you just spiral inwards. You'll get like a little petal from the very, very center that you can just cut off, but the result is this beautiful spirally lock of fringe. I must have made dozens and dozens of these. I would fold the fabric a bunch of times and then cut a circle out once, so I would have like 8 circles cut out once, but the spiral cut needed to be done one by one. My thought was this could be a fun way to get use of some scrap fabric, but you need like extra fabric for this. I think I probably used like 2 or 3 yards. If I do the math, I sewed fringe, like I attached it 6 pieces in a row, and I did maybe 8 rows on each arm. So that's 96 pieces of fringe, 96 circles I cut out, at least. If you start off with a bigger circle, you can cut the resulting spiral in half so that you have 2 pieces. That's what I did for a few of them. But once you have a huge pile of fringe, the way you put them on is going to be starting at the wrist of the sleeve, going in rows and making your way to the shoulders. And I haven't sewed the sleeves like into the tube, by the way, so it's still going to be the flat cutout shape, so we can sew onto it a lot easier. What you're going to do is lay down the fringe lengthwise along the sleeve with the center right under the needle, and you're just going to sew right along the width of it so that when you fold it over, you get 2 layers. Then afterwards, just placing another piece right next to it again and again until you reach the other end, leaving about 2 finger widths of space on both ends so that you have room to sew the sleeve shut in the end. And then you're just going to move up to make a new row, like 4 centimeters up, give or take, depending on how long and full the fringe is, because you want it to be able to cover all of the blank spaces in between the rows. It doesn't really matter if you put it on right side down or wrong side down, because ideally there's going to be so much fringe everywhere that you don't see where it starts. But at the top of the sleeve, on your shoulders, at the last couple of rows, you should be doing it right sides down so that when it's folded over, you see the pretty right side. Of course, you're not going to go right up to the top. You're going to leave some cushion room, like a couple of finger widths, for sewing it all together. When you're done, you should have 2 sleeves full of fringe. This actually looks like an ugly bath mat or something, but as you can see when I flip it over, it's just a bunch of like latitudinal rows. Now we can put all of these pieces together to make the bodysuit. I've shown you how I attach my sleeves multiple times before, but here I'm going to show you a different method that I've been using lately. So you're not going to sew the sleeves together into tubes just yet. First, we're going to attach the front and the back bodysuit pieces, but only at the shoulder seam, not down the torso or at the crotch. So we're just going to sew both shoulders together, and then I'm going to open it up so facing up is the right side of the bodysuit. And this area I'm pointing to is the extended armhole that we're going to sew our sleeves onto. Here's a little illustration for some motivation. I have here the front and back pieces attached at the shoulders, and I'll add the sleeve where these big armholes are. And then you're just going to fold the entire thing in half and sew a long stitch going from the wrist all the way down to the armpit and the torso, all in one continuous line. And of course, you can close it off with the crotch seam. The only thing that makes it a little bit difficult still is you have to be attaching them right sides together the entire time. So you have to flip the sleeve forward just like I'm doing here and then pin it into the armhole like that. You can start at the middle and then you just have to continue until you pin armpit to armpit on both ends. I know they're kind of curving away from each other, which is what makes it hard, but you kind of have to just force them together, making sure that the middle is pinned to the middle, the armpits are pinned to the armpits. If the sleeve and the armhole don't fit perfectly, you can take advantage of the stretchiness of the material to kind of just make it work and pull them to the right length. But if it's a drastic difference, it probably means you either cut your sleeve too small or your armhole too small. If it's the sleeve that's too small, you're just gonna make your bodysuit really tight and sew all the way up to that new armpit that has to be made. Or if it's a bodysuit that's too small, I would suggest cutting it a little bit wider to accommodate. Either way, you should reflect some kind of change in your pattern, so hopefully it doesn't happen again. This is what it should look like when it's all properly pinned together. Now you just have to feed this into your sewing machine, and here's me now doing the same exact thing to the other arm. This is what it should look like with both sleeves attached. So we're now at the stage where we can do the folding to close everything off. Now we have to fold it so it's inside out, so you're gonna want to tuck all of the fringe inside the sleeve as you're doing this. So the first thing I did once I pinned everything together was sew the crotch shut, and then I sewed one long continuous stitch from the bottom of the torso all the way to the sleeve. It should be easy because when you lift your arm up, it's practically like a straight line there anyway from like your hip to your wrist. By the way, this entire time I'm sewing this on a stretch stitch. A zigzag stitch also works. I used to think they were the same, but it turns out I didn't even know my machine has a special stretch stitch. It was just like an S1 sitting next to all the different lengths. It looks just like a straight stitch because it's like a straight line, but what's actually happening is the needle's going like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So it's really slow, but it looks really clean, and either that method or the zigzag stitch will give your seams enough slack to be stretched out. If my previous videos with attaching sleeves were too complicated, hopefully this was an easier method for you to understand, but I challenge you to try both ways anyway, because I think it's good for us to always try new techniques and sharpen our skills. I've learned that sewing requires you to be folding and placing things in a really strange way while thinking a few steps ahead so that it all works out later. And the more new things you try, the better you get at that kind of spatial geometric intuition. Anyway, when you're done with all of that, the last thing I did to this was just add a hem to all the raw edges. I just didn't hem the wrist holes since there was so much fringe going on, I didn't even bother. I just did it to the 2 leg holes and the neckline by folding the fabric inwards a little bit and sewing my stretch stitch all the way around that. And that, you guys, is how I made this costume. Thanks so much for watching, guys. This is the finished bodysuit. Is it the most fashionable thing I've ever worn? No, like, let's be honest, it's really sort of tacky, but like, It's just fun and fabulous, and if you give this tutorial a try, you can like just do one sleeve or maybe just do like a skirt moment. You are free to do whatever you want with these techniques. Speaking of which, these are some people who have been tagging me on Instagram in their work. If you guys ever recreate one of my tutorials or do some artwork of me, I would love to see it. So please tag me on Instagram at onlinekyne, and you can also tweet me at onlinekyne on Twitter. But thanks so much for watching. I can't wait to read all of your comments and see all of your recreations. But until then, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!